thank you everybody for joining us today. Wanted to talk a little bit about contractor management today and why it's probably one of the most important parts of an identity governance solution. There's, in general, about 2.1 million federal employees, 4.1 million contractors, and 1.2 million grant employees. If you take a look at those numbers, that's over 60% of the federal workforce is a contractor in some way or another to the federal government. And many of the times, these same rules that employees have to live under don't apply to the contractors. And at the same time, we're also giving some of the most privileged accounts and access to the organization to these people. So obviously a major risk to government organizations. But not only with risk, we also have some cost efficiencies. The latest numbers show that provisioning new contractors into a federal government agency takes between 5 and 10 days. Most contracts have a 20% turnover rate. So if you start doing the math of, even if you wanted to reduce those onboarding days by 1.5 days per contractor per time they onboard, we're looking at saving literally billions of dollars a year for the federal government. And if you could go back to your management and say, hey, I've got a good way for us to save 10 million, 20 million, 100 million, or with Brandon Iske on the phone here, one of the largest contractor base in the world, probably $100 million a year in savings, right? Those are things that your bosses are all going to say, all right, let's go figure out how to do this. And at the same time, reduce risks to the agencies. So with me today is Mr. Brandon Iske, the Security Enablers Chief Engineer for DISA. I thought it would be great to talk to Brandon about their challenges with contractor management, being the largest contractor base in the world. Right, they've got securing everything to planes, to tanks, to IT across the entire DoD. Multiple contracting organizations within DISA, as well as across the different branches of the DoD. I don't think there's anyone trying to solve a more complex set of problems in the government right now. So, Brandon, I'll let you introduce what a Security Enablers Chief Engineer is and some of the things that you're working on with DISA.
Yeah, thanks for that, Matt. So thank you, everyone, for the chance to talk here today. So again, I'm Brandon Iske, so I'm the Chief Engineer for our Security Enablers portfolio. So that's kind of a mouthful, but really includes our public key or PKI infrastructure, ICAM or Identity and Credential Access Management, new initiatives, Zero Trust Reference Architecture, and Software-Defined Enterprise. So I'm basically looking at the technical oversight for those 4 major programs within DISA. So thank you again, Matt, for this opportunity to talk. And I do think that the contractor management space is something, at least from our perspective, we're still in the very early days of executing our ICAM pilot prototype. So we haven't really gotten after some of these challenges yet. But I definitely think that these will kind of start to emerge as we start to mature. And I know some of the service components across the DoD and other parts of the federal government are already starting to work some of these challenges. So from my perspective, I'm kind of interested to hear your perspective on really with CISA's CDM program. I feel like they've laid a lot of groundwork on how contractor management can be done. And I'm just curious what you think are some of the opportunities or lessons learned that we could apply in the DoD space.
Yeah, absolutely. So we built the identity governance solution for DHS headquarters. So we were right in the middle of this, given that they have all of the sub-agencies under them, one being CISA and the CDM program. So when we built out the solution there, right, CDM and their master user record, right, which is the standard for all users across the 60 CDM affected agencies, contains a ton of information that I don't think a lot of agencies are using effectively to govern access, right? We have data in there for suitability, right? Is this contractor active? Are they inactive? Are they allowed on our networks? Are they not allowed on their networks, right? Along with that, their training information. Have they completed their annual user awareness training? Have they completed their privileged user training, right? Those things right there. If you don't take your training, technically, by the letter of the law, and literally the law in this case, right, we should kick you off the network, And at the same time, if you don't take your privilege training, you shouldn't be able to log into servers anymore. That data is all there, and I don't see a lot of agencies using that yet as part of their governance records. And as we've also gone forward, right, we have master device records as we've started to move more into the zero trust architectures that are defined there. That data can also be used as part of your governance program, right? What are they actually allowed to get access to from corporate device, their own corporate devices, government issued devices, right? Who cares if you can see the lunch menu from your personal device, but right, if you're going to start downloading data, that better stay on a government device for most organizations. One of the things that CDM doesn't include today that we did build out, and surprisingly, it wasn't that hard to find the data within the organization, is the contracts data, right? We've got, right, simple things like what is the name of the contract, what is the number of the contract, what is the organization that that contract belongs to. But then we start getting into things that really can start driving great processes across the agencies, right? Who's the contracting officer? At the end of the day, they're responsible for the people on those contracts and what they do on the network, right? A lot of times they've delegated some of those to a contracting officer representative who is the day-to-day manager of those people. And sometimes there's more than one contracting officer representative, especially for larger programs that might have multiple missions under them. Also looking at things like contract start dates, right? So if you've got people assigned to that contract, when's the first day they're supposed to be logging into the systems, right? When is that contract end date? Right? So on the last day, technically, we should be taking people off of those systems if that's the last contract they're assigned to. What's the period of performance, right? It might be a 5-year contract, but there's a renewal every year. And sometimes, even though it's a 5-year contract, that contract gets ended after 3 years, right? At that point, they should be also taken off. So we were able to go, they have at DHS, a contractor management, they have 2 contractor management systems actually, that we were able to aggregate the data into and extend the master user record to also include what contracts people were assigned to. I guess real quick to kind of wrap that up, there's really been 2 models we've seen for managing what contractors are on contracts, right? Most agencies have a real good record of the contracts, who the representatives are, who the contracting officers are, the start dates, the end dates, but they actually don't have a good record of who's assigned to what. So you either have a government organization driven approach where there's a ERP system that says, here's all the contractors that are assigned to the contracts that you can pull that data in. Or you give the contracting officer representative a way to take people out of your contractor master user record and add them to their contract. Or you provide the capability to delegate that out to members of the prime contractor, and then they're doing the additions, and then the contracting officer representative is doing an approval to say, yes, they've added them, and I agree to take them, the responsibility of those people as part of my contract. So those are kind of the 2 models. The nice thing about the SailPoint tools is there are the capabilities to have those all centrally built into the tool and then hook into all of the governance, right, and the certifications that go along with that. So you're not going to 5 different places to try and bring them on board. So I guess with that, and talking about bringing on people on board, Brandon, what does onboarding a new contractor look like in DISA and across the DoD? And how does that first day experience you envision changing as your organization starts to roll out the SailPoint and identity governance tools?
Yeah, so from my vantage point, I think it, like you kind of alluded to, I think it is a multi-day, multi-week process. So whether you're doing a DD-254 or some of the other forms and validations, there's a lot of steps there. And part of that is with the contracting officer. Some of that is with the folks within a program office who then also have to give additional entitlements for folks who are potentially on-site or off-site. So then they get additional things, whether they're sponsored for a DoD CAC or whether they get a government furnished equipment. So there's a lot of extra steps there that is very challenging for us to get folks on board in a timely fashion. So I definitely think there's a lot of opportunity for enhancement there. And I think what we're looking at, again, since we're still in the early days of our ICAM initiative, but as we can pull more of the data together into the master user record, our ability to really drive for what what I think a lot of the industry calls birthright entitlements, or birthright entitlements, sorry, is really trying to have a data-driven capability. So in the case of a contractor, when the right things happen in the right systems, that we should be able to drive some automated access, whether that be the email or other systems that are kind of, in the case of a contractor birthright, I would say it also applies in the civilian world too, of I don't need to do an extra request to have time and attendance, for example. So I know that's kind of out of the scope here of this conversation, but just examples of, I think, what we're trying to drive towards for further automation and streamlining of onboarding both civilians and contractors.
Yeah, I think a lot of those, having that data value available to you to drive those changes really is going to, right, decrease that amount of time to onboard people and, right, get people working a lot faster. I know us will go into organizations and, right, I might join 5-6 organizations across a year, and really that first month you're kind of like, all right, we want to get running, and you're still getting access to just the basic systems, and getting that stuff on day one will really change the game. And I think also some of the visit request type stuff, and being able, when you go TDY across overseas, right, having that access on the first day. I know that's a problem we're solving currently at the Army, and they're extremely excited to have that ready to go on day one, because, right, a lot of those trips are short term, right? It might be just for 5 days, 10 days, and then people are coming back home. So, and that's 10-20% of your time lost. So yeah.
In DoD, I mean, we do look at multi-persona users, whether it's civilian or contractor or military. We do look at those as different identities from a CAC perspective, or at least that physical identity or logical identity that is also used for physical access as well. So there's definitely some challenges there, as we have some contractors who are under multiple contracts or multiple umbrellas. So they'd be issued one CAC, but are potentially supporting multiple efforts. And so that also creates some pain points too of how we manage that. And again, I think some of our contractors who are involved with a lot of efforts start to accrue additional permissions, entitlements, and it's really hard for us to track that throughout the life cycle, and then also either revalidate or start to revoke those. We do that to some extent, at least from a CAC eligibility perspective. So if a contractor or any other person that's CAC eligible is no longer CAC eligible, then yes, certain enterprise level permissions start to fall off. But if you're moving between projects and organizations, it's still a little challenging, I think, in our environment to really track that and take the appropriate action. Is that something you're seeing as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the big challenges, right? You do have a lot of contractors that are supporting multiple things at the same time, right? Especially as we move a lot of people into cloud environments, a lot of DevSecOps type capabilities, right? You've got a small set of resources that are highly skilled. And I always use the example of like the Microsoft folks that they give to your agency to help support programs. I've seen those people on like 20, 25 different projects at the same time, right? And within a month, they truly do support that many things. And how do you manage the access control across all of those? And you don't want one manager to just blankly say, oh, I trust Joe, whatever he asks for, I'm just going to give him, right? That's completely the wrong thing we're trying to set up here for success. So being able to have the people on multiple contracts, being able to track, hey, this is their primary contract. These are the entitlements they were given because of these other contracts. That contract is expiring. What should we take away? What is their new primary contract, right? That's a lot of thought and change that needs to be built into these systems, which in the past, right, if that person as a contractor, we've seen have 20+ year careers with an agency, by the time they're done, they might as well be the director of the agency with the amount of access they've gained. And right, that's not the right solution, right? They could have started on the help desk, and now they're running a huge program. Like we've even seen instances where somebody was working in the contract shop with procurement, leaves as a contractor and joins another organization. Their access never got revoked. So now they can go back into those contract systems and go, oh, that's a $20 million opportunity for my new company. We know exactly what to bid. right? Holy shoot, that's a lot of trouble that a lot of people in a lot of different places are going to get into. But at the end of the day, that should have never happened to begin with. So I think as we've got this data in the systems, those are all kinds of opportunities to do better, right? As I said earlier, with the training data, is your training expiring? We warn you 7 days ahead of time. We warn you and tattletale you to your manager 3 days ahead of time and tell you, hey, if you don't get this done in 3 days, we're turning this off, or we're going to put you, this was something we did at the NRO that got a lot of pushback in the beginning, but the second year people had to go through it, it didn't happen anymore. But we literally put someone in an OU in Active Directory when their training expired, that the only website they could get to when they logged in was the training website. And as soon as they completed their training, they could go do their job again. But right, that was right. Everyone complained the first year, but guess what? The second year, that didn't happen. So just some really great opportunities. And then there's also efficiencies, right? A lot of times you might have contracting officers in these organizations that leave and take a new opportunity, or they're no longer in that role with the organization. A lot of times that data goes stale in the contractor management systems. And we now have an ability to say, hey, we found out from the HR system that this person has an end date. You need to go find a new contracting officer representative here, or automatically when that person goes away, assign all the people to the CO so business keeps flowing as usual, right? And those are all things that slow down operations in the agencies every single day, that like they're little things, but when you add them up across millions of people, become big things really, really quick. So looking at those opportunities in your identity governance system, really to just grease the skids and make the organization work faster too, is some of my favorite things to see, having rolled these out for many government agencies. So
yeah,
I'll get off my soapbox.
We're early on our journey too. So I think what I'm also seeing is we're definitely going to have challenges. I think pulling some of this data together. I know it exists in various data silos across the department, but the way I look at it is that we'll be able to define some workflows where, yeah, there'll be user inputted things to approve to get through these workflows. But as we can bring these additional data sources and feeds together at the master user record layer, it really will give us the opportunity to streamline these and really meet the outcomes that we're talking about here.
Yeah, I will say I applaud this and right, they've truly made a heavy investment in identity and access management and realized that this is a lifelong program and not a short-term project, right? You've talked before many times, right, that this will live on forever, right? The organization never stops sunsetting applications and buying new ones, right? And if you look at this as a project with an end date, right, you're going to fail. So I applaud you all for doing that and realizing, right, what a driver to the organization this is going to be.
And it's been great seeing the leadership guidance we've had on this, both in our strategies, all the way at the DoD CIO level and across the department. There really is a lot of excitement and energy in this space that frankly hasn't been here for quite a few years. So I'm glad to see that we're spearheading this going forward.
Yeah, I guess Brandon, given, I know we wanted to talk a little bit about contract expiration and waivers, and we're down to only 4 minutes left here. So I think we'll just skip that for this time, but you just said, right, like you've got major buy-in from your senior leadership on security, on identity. Obviously, you're in a heck of a spot in your role of, right, seeing zero trust, seeing identity, seeing PKI, get insights into some of the SOC and NOC capabilities, right? You're sitting in the catbird seat of like being able to drive some major change. But what has it been within the organization that was the light bulb moment for all the seniors above you to go, wow, this is really important and can drive super change across the entire org? Or was there one thing, or was it just a culmination of a lot of things?
I think from my perspective, I think in kind of, I'd say what, early to mid 2019 was really when I think the digital modernization strategy within CIO really started to identify ICAM as one of the gap areas. And I think from a lot of the work CIO did to gather some of the gaps across the enterprise, that's really where the authentication services, account lifecycle management with identity governance, and the master user record really became the three big things or three big requirements that DISA was tasked and funded to really begin working on the enterprise behalf. And I think between that and the financial audit that DoD underwent, all of those, I think, all have kind of come together to really thrust this into the spotlight. And so it's definitely a fun opportunity here of building the plane as we fly it, kind of, to some extent, as we like to say, because we've got a lot of eyes on us, but we're also building it as we go. So lots of challenges, but a lot of fun to make this happen. And I'd say from the zero trust perspective, that's also been exciting that we're getting at the final finish line of being able to release the zero trust reference architecture for DoD and identity, and what we're aiming to succeed here at is absolutely critical to that strategy as well too. So how we do user and device identity is absolutely critical before we can start doing advanced concepts and moving towards a data-centric security model like zero trust. So it's very fun from my vantage point to get my hands in both of these spaces. So
yeah, I will say I actually just saw the preview of that paper this morning for the first time, and I saw it was marked FOUO, and really hope that we could make it completely unclassified, because there's a great graphic in there that shows identity, everything from a security perspective, a SOAR perspective, in the entire organization points back to identity at the core, right? I think just having that picture out there in the world that people go, oh yeah, everything, whether it's a device, a laptop, a mobile device, a system to system call, or the humans, right? They all point back to identity, and that's the core of what's going to make the decisions, or help make the decisions across the board. So yeah, I hope you could release that out to the world soon.
I sure hope so. We're working towards that. But
so, all right. Well, we are at our 30 minutes. So thank you very much, Brandon, for your time today. As always, insightful, and looking forward to continuing the conversations.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Take care, all.